Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eriko from Regulatory Support Office. I work with Precision Ambia to support clinicaltrial.gov reporting. As Erica says, so we want to continue on Q&A series on ct.gov. But before that, I want to give you a quick reminder of consent form posting requirement in clinicaltrial.gov. So Office for Human Research Protection at HHS came to give talk during last month's ct.gov task force meeting. So she came to clarify some of the confusion regarding new informed consent form posting requirement in revised common rule 45 CFR 46116H. So what is informed consent form posting requirement? So the revised common rule requires that for any clinical trial conducted or supported by a common rule department or agency, one consent form must be posted on a publicly available federal website within a specific time frame. So important point is the consent form must have been used in enrolling participants in order to satisfy this new provision. And please do not post signed consent. So now, which study needs to post a consent form? So this requirements does not apply to all studies. It actually applies to small portion of study what IRB oversees. So this requirement applies to a clinical trial that meet following criteria. So if it applies to HHS funded, so NIH funded clinical trial, where our PI is the grant awardee or UT Southwestern is the main site for NIH-funded multi-center clinical trial, which was approved on or after January 21st, 2019. So if applies to all, then you are required to post one consent form that have been used in enrolling participants. So now what is the timeline? So regulation requires consent form posting after the clinical trial has closed to recruitment and no later than 60 days after the last study visit by any subject. So while consent form could be posted before a clinical trial closes to recruitment, but it does not satisfy 45 CFR 46. So posting must be occur after closing recruitment. So one of the confusion that was clarified during the meeting was that what is considered the last study visit by any subject. So visit occur only because of the research project, so not because of the clinical care. So last study visit also does not have to be in-person visit. So it may be like maybe online survey or phone call, so those count. So with respect to multi-site study, OHRP considers that the last study visit by any subject refers to the last study visit that occur at any of the sites. So not to the last study visit that occur at the particular site. So now, where do we post informed consent form? So at this time, two publicly available federal websites that will satisfy the consent form posting requirement, so as required by the revised common law. So one of which is clinicaltrial.gov. So there's the other one is actually regulation.gov. So you can post it using a docket folder, but we recommend posting consent form in ct.gov so that we can assist you with posting consent form. And we also send a reminder email to the study team to stay in compliance with this new posting requirement. So, so once again, the 60 days clock starts when study is close to enrollment, close to recruitment. So our office will send you a reminder before due date But in order for us to send reminder in a timely manner, study team must maintain accurate study status documented in the EIRB. So when study is permanently close to enrollment, don't wait for next CR or annual update to report study status change. Submit study status change modification to the IRB. So in modification smart form item 1.1, so there's an option for study status change for the type of modification. So when you select that, it will opens up a new subsection where you can specify what procedure remain on the study. So we get ERB report on the study status change. So we can send a reminder email to post informed consent form in ct.gov. So we use also same report, so same data dump to send a reminder email for results reporting as well. So once again, please don't forget to submit a modification when study status change. So if you want to learn more about it, please visit HHS website. So OHRP recently issued guidance and instruction on this posting requirement. So these are updates from me. So now I'm going to pass over to Rashida.
Thank you, Eriko. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rasija Nambiar, and I will continue with the Q&A series. And today's topic is results reporting. But before I start, I would like to give a quick overview on results reporting. As you all know, results are required to be reported within 12 months of the primary completion date, which is the date you collect the last patient last visit data for the primary outcome measures for FDA-regulated applicable clinical trials and NIH-funded clinical trials. Consequences of non-compliance include civil money penalties and loss of funding. There is one caveat for NCI-supported trial. You have an option to publish trial results in a peer-reviewed scientific journal within 12 months of trial primary completion date instead of reporting results in ct.gov. And with that, I'll now go over the Q&A part. One of the most frequently asked questions during results reporting is, what is aggregated data? For results, remember, you are required to enter aggregated data of each outcome per arm in tabular format within the ct.gov system. So aggregated data is summary data. Think about Table 1 and Table 2 of the manuscript. Table 1 is typically a sample description at baseline, and Table 2 is typically sample description by arm. For results reporting in ct.gov, you need to manually enter those summary data per arm in ct.gov. You cannot upload the Table 1 of the manuscript. There is no upload or auto-populate option for results reporting. Here is a screen capture of results reporting section of ct.gov. I'm not going too much into detail, but there are two types of data that can be included in the outcome measures and statistical analysis module. One is discrete data, and the other one is continuous data. These data are required to be reported or summarized by the measure type and measure of dispersion or precision used. The measure type data element represents the method used to summarize the outcome data. The measure of dispersion or precision data element represents a measure of the spread of the data. Discrete data are summarized with a measure type of count, for which the measure of dispersion or precision data element is not relevant. And for this, not applicable is automatically selected as the measure of dispersion or precision, as seen in the screenshot here. If number is chosen as a measure type, one of the confidence intervals or not applicable can be selected as an option as the measure of precision or dispersion as appropriate. Continuous data are summarized with a measure type of central tendency, for example, mean, median, geometric mean, etc., and an appropriate measure of dispersion or precision, for example, standard deviation, full range, confidence interval, etc., used to aggregate the data. These are required information if not reported in Table 1 or Table 2 of the manuscript, which the PI asks you to enter on their behalf. So at that time, you would need to consult with the PI or biostatistician to calculate appropriate measure of dispersion for each outcome. Next question is, do I need to submit statistical test results? So the answer is, it is optional for most part. Statistical result may be required if it is pre-specified in the protocol as primary or secondary outcome measures. Typical example including MTD, that is maximum tolerated dose for phase 1 trials, and measure of association such as odds ratio or risk ratio, hazards ratio, and inferential statistics such as mean difference. One thing to keep in mind that typically these statistical test results are not per arm data. It is the combined data of both arms, such as odds ratio or inferential statistics, which is calculated between or across arms. Therefore, it cannot be reported per arm. So what would you do since ct.gov requires outcome to be reported per arm? So these statistical reports should be reported in the statistical analysis section attached to the outcome measure section using the Add Statistical Analysis link. Alternative option is tweaking the statistical results outcome into quantifiable outcome measure that can be reported per arm in a tabulated manner for the number of subjects analyzed. For example, instead of reporting maximum tolerated dose, report number of participants with dose-limiting toxicity, and perhaps use statistical analysis section to report the maximum tolerated dose. So in this way, you can still report the outcome per arm. Now, another related following question is, will posting clinical trial results on ct.gov be considered as prior publication? The answer is no. Since you are not reporting the study results, but only the aggregated data is reported in tabular format. And the journal publication policy has made it clear that it will not consider summary results data posted in tabular format required by ct.gov to be prior publication for the purposes of manuscript consideration. In order to confirm, you can also reach out to the journal before submitting your summary results to ct.gov. And please note that ICMJ clinical trial registration policy requires prospective registration of all interventional clinical studies, but it does not require results reporting. The other frequent question is, can I get an extension for results reporting? This topic is often discussed during the task force meetings that we attend. And in fact, even last week, the Senior Regulatory Counsel in the Office of Clinical Policy at the FDA came to talk about it. I want to highlight some important points from his presentation that would help answer this question. The extension may be permitted if request is submitted prior to the results reporting due date, that is the day before, with a valid reason. The responsible party can submit the extension request in clinicaltrials.gov protocol registration and results system, that is a PRS system, as shown here. The regulation permits a responsible party to request an extension of the deadline for submitting clinical trials results information for good cause. For example, natural disasters, unforeseen situations, etc. And the extension request must include a description of the reasons that the responsible party believes constitutes good cause to justify an extension, and an estimated date on which the results information will be submitted, with sufficient details to allow for evaluation of the request. The NIH director is the one who provides the decision to grant or deny the extension request electronically. If the extension request is granted, the responsible party must submit the clinical trial results information not later than the date of the deadline specified in the electronic response. This is a real example of unsuccessful extension request that was submitted by the UT Southwestern PI to the NIH director. PI requested extension because sponsor requested to the PI to hold off on the results reporting, but NIH responded stating that information provided did not appear sufficient to evaluate whether there is good cause for an extension. I must say that probability of getting an extension request approved is pretty slim. Now, this is an example that the UW School of Medicine and Public Health used to obtain a successful extension last year from NIH. In this example, the reason for requesting extension was COVID-19 and was thus granted by the NIH director. This is the last question for today's session, but one of the most frequently asked by study teams. Study was terminated prematurely, or study was closed before meeting study endpoint. Do I need to report the results? There are many reasons for early termination, maybe due to recommendations from the Data Monitoring Committee over safety concerns. Maybe the investigator observed early effect or futility. Maybe it's terminated based on risk or benefit assessment during interim analysis. So the results reporting is required for terminated study, and it depends on the overall recruitment status and whether or not the data were collected for the purpose of the study. For those studies that are terminated prematurely, but data were collected, then results reporting of available data are required, even just the demographics. Whereas those studies where it's withdrawn before stating the enrollment, no results are required to be reported because there is no reportable data. Here are specific scenarios and recommended action when reporting results in ct.gov for terminated studies. And by this, I'm concluding my slides on the Q&A for results reporting. Thank you everyone for listening to me, and I'll now pass it over to Eriko.
Thanks, Rosija. So in the interest of time, I would like to highlight just a few points regarding metrics. So last month, we were able to maintain 100% compliance according to Public FEDA non-compliance website. And here's the overall real-time compliance for all UT Southwestern record. Again, overall, we are doing pretty good. We had 0 FEDA problem records last month, a little bump on non-FEDA problems, but we were able to resolve. And this is sponsor investigator support metrics for May for your reference. So starting next fiscal year, we hope to present these metrics in timetable, like one for ct.gov, so we can show the trend of sponsor investigators activity, as well as number of IND, IDE, and expanded acts EAP held by UT Southwestern investigator. Also, landscape analysis is almost complete, so stay tuned for those data. And I will end with the usual slide. Next slide. And here's a selected resource for ct.gov. And contact and link to consultation for sponsor investigator, IND, IDE, EAP related questions. And selected resource for that. So this concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I will turn over to Eric.
While Eric gets his slides up, I just want to thank Erico and Rashida for your presentation. If you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A.